So the topic of today's talk is the power of forgiveness. Power of forgiveness. So Father Moon talked about this topic on several occasions. I have a couple of quotes. So he says, this is way back in 1957. Look at that. Great forgiveness is possible only when understand the other person's situation 100%. Because God knows our situation, He forgives us. In fact, I'm just going to leave it at that. It's really to the point. Great forgiveness is possible only when one understands the other person's situation 100%. So that's why I'm just going to focus on that one line. That's the whole sermon right there. So the rest of it is techniques you can use to forgive. And this is from my book, Experiences with God, which I did not bring a copy. But it's on Amazon. So anyway, that's right out of the book. But let's talk about this line. When one understands the other person's situation 100%, you can forgive that person. Is it easy to forgive people? It's not easy. So I'm just going to tell you a story about how I forgave somebody. And it's based on what Father says right there. So, my name is Papalardo. Does anybody know what kind of a name that is?
Italian.
Huh?
Italian.
Worse than that. Sicilian. If you know about Sicily, it has the highest murder rate in the world. Okay, so we are a very violent people. So anyway, my father was Sicilian, born in Sicily, and then emigrated to the United States when he was 10 years old. He ruled the house with this. Can you see? Okay, he literally would walk around the house with this belt. And if you got out of line, whack of it. Okay. So, long story short, when I joined the church, I had great pent-up resentment towards my father. Okay. Anger and resentment towards my father. But now, I joined the church. And that doesn't feel good to have resentment towards my father. I got to fix that. So I figured out, and I don't know how many, somebody must have taught this to me, but I did something I call a forgiveness meditation. And I describe it in my book, if you want to know like how exactly to do it. But I'm going to tell you how you do it. It's focused on understanding the other person's situation 100%. So what I did is I said, I'm going to try to forgive my father by understanding him better. So now you have to understand, my father came from a generation. Do you think it was acceptable for men to cry? No. They did not cry, and they did not express their feelings because it was considered unmanly. So I never knew how he felt about anything. Okay, because he didn't tell you. All right? But he would tell you facts about his life. He wouldn't tell you how he felt about it, but he would tell you the facts about his life. Do you understand what I'm saying? So what I did is I collected every fact that I knew. And then I reflected on how he must have felt. Okay? So what I knew, okay, he's born in Sicily in a small town that's agricultural. And I knew, he told me that his grandfather had goats. Okay? And he told me that he used to collect prickly pear cactus. Do you know what that is? Prickly pear cactus. So he's growing in this kind of, idyllic rural setting. At 10 years old, his father decided to move the family to New York City, Little Italy, in 1932. What was going on in America in 1932?
After the stock market depression.
The Great Depression. Okay, so he moves. Okay, so you go from this rural town where you're running around playing with goats and collecting prickly pear cactus, and now you live in a 5-story tenement with no elevator on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in Little Italy. Do you think that's a little bit of a shock?
Yes.
Do you think there were a lot of goats in the Lower East Side of Manhattan to play with? Any prickly pear cactus growing around there? So I thought, how do you think he felt? And my heart started to soften. The next thing I knew about my dad is that when he was in school until the 6th grade, and then that was the end of it. No more school after 6th grade. Is it because he got kicked out of the school? No. He didn't do anything wrong. He was a very intelligent student. But in those days, it was not unusual for the family to force the child to go to work. So he had to go to work. So how old are you when you're in the 6th grade? Maybe 11 or 12. So 11 or 12, he goes to work full-time in the family business, which is a laundry route, collecting laundry. Like he had to climb up the stairs and bring the laundry down from the 5-story, put it on a horse-drawn wagon. Can you imagine? So, did he get paid? No. He said that every Saturday, his mom would give him 10 cents. And he would be allowed to go to the picture show and watch Tom Mix and, the Western cowboy and Indian movies. And that's what he got to do on Saturday. Otherwise, no money. Okay? So, he didn't finish elementary school. You know what I was doing when I was 11 or 12? I was in a private Catholic school playing Little League baseball. Wow. And then I started crying. And I wept for my father's lost childhood. Oh my God. Then my father turned 18. So he's born in 1922. So what would 18 years plus 22 be? What does that come out to?
World War II.
1940. So he turned 18, and he was so excited because he was now considered a man, and he was able to buy a used pickup truck and start a delivery service on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, steering clear of the mafia-controlled areas, but he was doing okay. And then guess what happened? This little thing called World War II. And he got drafted into the United States Army. Now, in my father's house, apartment where my family lived, they had a portrait just like this hanging on the wall. And you know what the portrait was? Mussolini. They loved Mussolini. They thought he was great. And so my dad said to his dad, who am I going to fight? He says, well, you're going to go fight Mussolini. And he goes, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But anyway, imagine 18 years old now, he's going to war against maybe his own country. How do you think he felt? So he said that he told the draft board, I don't mind serving in the United States Army, but I don't want to fight my countrymen. And they said, no problem, fill out this form right here. And he filled out the form, saying he's Italian and da-da-da-da-da. Guess where they sent him? They sent him to Italy. Okay, they sent him to the invasion of Sicily. Okay, so, and he wound up in a place called Anzio, which was a beach south of, it was like D-Day. You know D-Day? It was just like D-Day, but it was in Italy. So here he is in this invasion, and he's on the beach at Anzio, dug in, shells coming in. And one night, he and some other soldiers went on patrol, looking for the enemy. Okay, and they came across, I think it was a farmhouse, and there were 5 Italian soldiers in there. 5 Italian, and they had them surrounded. And the Americans were about to blow these guys to smithereens. They started crying out, please don't, in Italian, please don't shoot us. We have wives and children. Please let us surrender. We don't want to fight you guys. Because actually Italians don't really want to fight. It was the Germans that were forcing them to fight. You understand? So my father speaks Italian, and he heard the guys crying out, and he said, don't shoot, don't shoot. Stand down. They just want to surrender. And they allowed those guys to surrender. said, now I know why God sent me to Italy. Those 5 guys are alive today, or no, not anymore, but they were alive and went home to their families after the war. Because if my father had not been there, they would have died. So then, he's in his position, is taking fire, and his sergeant gets wounded, and he climbs out under fire and grabs him, picks him up, and carries him to safety, and is awarded a medal for that. He's wounded twice, 2 Purple Hearts, and other medals, right? The one that he told me was, he was on the beach, and the shells are coming in. People are blowing. It's called a foxhole. You dig a hole on the beach. And he said he prayed to God. He said, God, I'll do anything for the rest of my life for you if you get me off this beach. And he was Catholic. What do Catholics do after they finish the prayer? Come on. They go like this. So as soon as he finished the prayer, please get me off the beach, he raised to make the sign of the cross, and a piece of shrapnel hit him in the hand. And the medics got him off the beach, like that. And so now I understood why every Sunday he would wear his suit and his tie, and all of us would get in the sedan and go to church. Every Sunday. I never missed Sunday one time from the time I was 7 until I was 16. Can you imagine? He faithfully went. So by this time, I'm bawling. And I'm realizing that this guy that I was so angry at is actually a great hero. He's my hero. When I reflect on how he must have felt, understanding this situation 100%. Even he lost one kidney, piece of shrapnel gun. And they didn't even know it was in there, but years later he was bleeding blood, and they found out there's a piece of shrapnel. You got to take that out. Okay. So the point is, if you really, like, what I recommend you do, if there's something you're really angry at, like if you're angry at your parents, let's be honest, some of you are still angry at your parents. Reflect on their life. Do a meditation and think about what was their early childhood like? What were their parents like? Did they have true parents? Probably not. Right? So they didn't get the love and the nurturing that they needed in order to develop, right? And then your heart can soften. And you can have compassion, and when you have compassion, you can forgive. So now I'm crazy about my dad. He's like my hero. I'm like so proud of him, yeah? Because I understand his heart. So when I understand somebody 100%, I can forgive. That's what Father said. I can forgiveness. God understands our situation 100%. He forgives everything, no matter what we do. We have these appetites. We have sexual appetite. That's usually the number one thing we're struggling with is, oh, I looked at porn, or I shagged my girlfriend in the backseat of the car in high school. We're like, God's like, look, I created those appetites in you. Be easy on yourself. Forgive yourself. Or we overeat, or whatever. Or we lose our patience and get angry. Yeah, everybody, even God sometimes lost his patience and got angry. But he forgives himself. Forgiveness. So when I forgave my dad, I felt liberated. I was the one who got healed. Because all that poison went away. Do you know Nelson Mandela? You know what Nelson Mandela used to say? He said, to hold a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Exactly. Because that will kill you eventually. The anger and resentment, even cancer and things like that, you will get sick from anger and resentment. Okay? I think that's all I have to say. Any questions? No, invite somebody else.
Okay, thank you, Ron, for that wonderful Let's give another hand for Ron. Nobody here has resentment toward their parents or their children, do?
Oh, wait, one last thing. Don't worry. Some of us have resentment towards God. But we can't admit it to ourselves because that's not acceptable. Right? So I was also angry towards God. So I went, and I didn't know it. I'm sorry, this is really important, so I gotta mention this. I was, 25 years old. I'd been in the church for 5 years. I thought I was this great church member, and I'd been a state leader, MFT captain, all of this. I'm this great guy. No, I don't think so. And I noticed that my energy was dropping, and I was struggling, and didn't know. So I asked my leader if I could go to the workshop. Dr. Durst was doing a workshop in Camp New Hope, and I went there. And Annie Redmond advised me, she says, just go out in the woods and tell God exactly how you feel. And I went out in the woods and I searched my heart. And to encapsulate, basically, I was raised Roman Catholic. We were taught basically we're miserable sinners in need of salvation. We're such pieces of crap that Jesus had to die on the cross for us. That was like my self-esteem. It's my fault that Jesus died, kind of thing. So I went into the woods and I thought about it. And then I told God, it took a lot of courage. But I was completely honest with God. And I said to God, the way I see it, you are the one who's responsible for all of human suffering. You're the one that's responsible for all this crap going down. Because if you hadn't created us, none of this would happen. Now, yeah, right, Gail. So I'm looking for the lightning bolt. Right? A lightning bolt's going to come and vaporize me on the spot, but I didn't care because I felt I had to get it off my chest. You know what happened? I had a mystical experience. A very powerful, like St. Paul knocked off his horse, God came into the woods and spoke to me directly. It's the first time I ever heard words from God. But here's the thing. When he came with his presence, it was surrounded by unconditional love. He wasn't angry at all. I just felt he was like, thank God that you got this off your chest. And here I am. And he comes into the woods, and I start to choke up because I feel how much he loves me. He loves me after I say this to him. And then you know what he says about my accusation? You know what he says? He said, you're right. You got it. He said, Ron, you're right. And then he said, and I accept 100% responsibility for this situation. Absolute humility. Absolute humility. Can you imagine a God of absolute? And I won't tell the whole story, but it's in my book. But that's the day I fell in love with God. Because I knew that this God really cared about me. It wasn't this ego. Because you're talking about, even I have to be honest when I hear, let's have worship God. The God I know is not interested in being worshipped. He'd rather take you out for ice cream. That's much more interesting. I mean, I'm a parent. I don't want to be worshipped. But because we have this concept that, God is like a king, and we know that kings in human history are like these, they'll cut your head off, right? That's not God. God is a parent. He's not interested in being worshipped. I hate to break it to you. He's not interested. Okay? So that was my experience of the unconditional love of God. I fell head over heels in love with God that day, even though I'd already been in church 5 years. That was like my spiritual birth. Okay, just wanted to share.